Institutions that boast a rich history generally view that history with a great sense of pride. Many times this pride is expressed through the built environment of the institution, as is the case with Lindenwood University. Whether it's the historic Sibley Hall, the elaborate Butler Library, or the recently constructed Spelman Campus Center, it is easy to see that the buildings encompassing the institution are of great value to the school. While all of Lindenwood's structures are cherished as a part of its history, the one that stands out as being the most unique is the historic Water Tower, located near the school's Visitor and Student Center. Built around the year 1902 on what at the time was the edge of Lindenwood College campus, the 72-foot-high, 25-foot in diameter structure houses a steel-constructed cylindrical tank that is enveloped in a solid brick casing. As the first water tower of St. Charles, the location of the highest elevated terrain had to be used, employing gravity to create water pressure. The 250,000-gallon capacity tank became necessary to serve the growing community expanding to the south and to the west. She is a grand old lady of the skyline, and her lower half is wrapped in an ornate skirt embroidered with brick arches and columns. Beautiful and functional, these columns are actually necessary to support the massive weight of the top half of her masonry dress, while lending a certain air of long-forgotten architectural flair not seen in newer buildings. Her distinctive hat, a conical roof with a brim formed by a Victorian-style wood plank and wrought iron catwalk, was originally pitched to direct falling rainwater into the standpipe. But if her particular sunbonnet really held a head full of memories, what stories would she tell us about the more than a century she has stood on top of her hill?
I remember the early years when St. Charles, as a quiet little town, there were still many horse-drawn buggies then, lots of wide open fields with roaming livestock, and there was talk of a World's Fair nearby. Lindenwood, a small women's college that I shared my hill with, kept me entertained with its many students coming and going. Lindenwood was the first college west of the Mississippi, founded in 1827. I felt proud to serve the thriving community of St. Charles and enjoyed seeing it grow. Year after year, I watched the parade of Lindenwood students embark in their many activities, practicing golf, playing tennis, galloping equestrians, or just sunbathing in the grass. It was not uncommon for students to escape the heat of a warm afternoon by seeking the cool shade that I would cast, and pass the hours studying. I continued as the only water storage supply for the outer reaches of the city until the end of World War II, at which time St. Charles was experiencing rapid growth, and I was simply not sufficient to fill the needs of my growing family. A second tower was constructed directly to my south, and we served the city together for approximately 10 years until my declining health became too problematic, when a third tower was added and I was forced into retirement.
Within a few years of the brick tower's closing, a movement began to grow in St. Charles that stressed the preservation of the city's historical landmarks. In the 1960s, many historic buildings were being demolished to make room for parking in the city's business district. This destruction of the city's historic environment concerned many citizens. People began to purchase historic buildings and turn them into businesses that could double as tourist attractions. This restoration not only renewed Main Street, but produced a growing awareness and appreciation for our city's hidden treasure. But before the Preservation Board was fully developed, the brick water tower was slated for demolition. Lindenwood, however, wanted to preserve the tower and in 1971 purchased it for $1. The purchase was made, however, under the contingency that Lindenwood would have to preserve and oversee the tower's upkeep.
I waited patiently, stagnant year after year. My facade fell further and further into disarray. While the struggle for ownership and funding dragged on, it would be 42 years before my restoration would begin.
In 1997, contractors were sought to bid the tower's restoration. But first, a cleaning crew would be necessary to extract the several feet of pigeon droppings inside the tower accumulated from past decades. With this feat completed, the work to restore the tower would begin. The roof was repitched to repel rainwater and not to retain it. The catwalk strengthened and painted. Deteriorated bricks were replaced and large cracks to the structures were repaired. The final cost of the project came to $66,000.
My being here is no accident. I proudly served this community for many, many years. I watched atop this little hill as the community outgrew my capacity. Even as I was removed from service, I continued to watch my family grow. It became difficult for a period, contemplating feelings of incompetence, old age and worthlessness, the fear of never knowing whether or not I would be here for another year loomed over me. But now I stand atop this hill with great pride once again. My presence has been acknowledged and appreciated. I received the necessary repairs not to serve the community with water, but as a historical landmark, proof of the past 100 years and welcoming in another century.